I'm going to talk about my philosophy about leadership, because when I hear the word leadership, I think about influence. So let's first talk about, what does the word influence actually mean? Okay. So influence is the power that you have to affect the actions, behaviors, and opinions of other people. In short, it means you have the influence to move somebody from point A to point B. Now, there are two kinds of influence that all leaders have. Internal influence, and that's the power that you have over yourself. And in my opinion, this type of influence is the single most important type of influence to practice and cultivate that will impact your ability to impact others. Internal influence is your ability to move yourself from point A to point B. Because one of the things about being a great leader is knowing how to be flexible, knowing how to change, knowing how to pivot, knowing how to grow. And that means you've got to have influence over yourself. The other type of influence is external influence. And that is your ability to move other people from point A to point B. You know, we all have had these experiences, right, where we've been around other leaders. We've been around people that have had that implied influence, right? Because of their position, because of their title. But I guarantee you, you've had the experience where you've had to work for or been around another leader, but they have not been that influential on you. They were either a jerk or a micromanager, or they showed up in a way that made you feel awful. You have had that experience. And one of the reasons why I want to hammer home this point, that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you do. Leadership, the best kind of leadership and the most powerful kind of influence, is the type that's earned. It has nothing to do with your position. It has nothing to do with your title. It has everything to do with how you show up and the way in which you treat other people. I want you to understand that the most important aspect of raising your influence and of becoming a better and a more influential leader is deciding that you want to be and claiming that leadership role in your life. When you look at leadership, and Brendon's right, it's super important that you're a student your whole life, that leadership is something that you should study. When you start to look into leadership, you're going to see that there's all kinds of books, there's all kinds of philosophies. There are servant-based leaders, there are transformational leaders, there are situational leaders, there are people who are authoritarian leaders. There's a bazillion different leadership styles. Well, what I want you to think about is, what kind of leader do you want to be? And there are two questions that I think are important for you to ask yourself. And the reason why it's important for you to ask yourself these two questions is because they will give you a roadmap that maps to your values and maps to your goals and maps to who you are in terms of cultivating a leadership style. Okay. So here are the two questions. Number one, when you leave a room, what do you want people to say about you? And these are really important, and I'm going to explain why. So for me, when I leave a room, what do I want people to say about me? Oh my gosh, she's authentic, she's smart, she's inspiring, she's fun. I want to work with her. I love her. Like, that's the kind of vibe. Those are the adjectives. And it's important for you to answer that question authentically for you. What do you want people to say about you when you leave a room? Because to me, embedded in that description is the roadmap to the type of leader that you want to be. And I guarantee you, what Brendon would say in answer to that question is different than what I would say. And it's different than what you would say. I see motivating, caring, informative, inspiring, happy, and confident. These are really important words for you to think about. And here's why. Once you answer that question, what do you want people to say about you when you leave a room? You now have this roadmap, as I've mentioned, and you can use a very powerful body of research called behavioral activation therapy, BAT. The shorthand for BAT, I talk about it a lot in my training, is act like the person you want to become. It sounds supremely stupid and simple. Everything I talk about is. And oftentimes the greatest change always comes from the simple, obvious stuff. If you want people to say that you are inspiring, happy, and confident, or you are fun, positive, and kind, act like that person. Research shows that simply setting an intention at the beginning of the day about who you want to be today, what are those words you want people to say about you when you leave the room? Wow, that Mel Robbins, she is so authentic. She is just herself. She is so smart. She is so inspiring. She's so fun to be. I really want to work with her. That is critical for you to write down. Now let's talk about the second one, okay? Because this is going to measure the impact that you want to make, okay? So the first one is sort of giving you the roadmap to acting like the kind of leader, the sort of leadership style. Now we're going to talk about impact, and that is, how do you want people to feel when they're around you? See, the first question was about you and your reputation. The second one is about the impact that you make in people, how you're perceived. For me, I want people to leave feeling empowered, seen, and inspired. And if I had to ask, like do another one, it would be energized and appreciated. So what are the words that describe how you want people to feel when they are around you? You see, another metaphor, and I love metaphors too, is leadership and influence is all about action and intention. And a metaphor that I like to think about when I think about leadership and influence is, we have this awesome dog named YOLO. He is literally one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. He's 2 years old, so he's just coming out of the puppy stage. He's an Australian Shepherd, and we've had lots of dogs in our life, and we have this awesome cat named Mr. Noodle. They're all over my Instagram stories if you follow me online. But he is just joyous. When I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to this dog panting back and forth in the bedroom because he wants to go outside, he's so excited. The second he hears me stir, he's like up on the bed. He's super excited. And I take him for a walk every morning, and we're down vacationing this month. And we're right by the ocean. And one of the greatest things that I do every morning is I walk the dog. And so I throw the ball and he runs in and out of the ocean. And, if you've ever been around a dog and a dog runs into the ocean and runs down the sand and then runs back into the ocean, what does a dog do when they're wet? They like shake, right? Shake. And then sand and ocean water and seaweed and everything that's on the dog goes spraying off in every direction. It gets all over everything. Your leadership and influence style is the exact same way. You are sprinkling it and spreading it everywhere you go. And so it's so important for you to answer these questions. How do you want people to feel when they're around you? Because that is the ocean and the sand and everything that shakes off you as you're moving around through your day-to-day life. And if you want to make sure that people feel, and I see this, playful, at peace, empowered, good, you need to be intentional about causing that in people.
Hey, my friends, it's Brendon Burchard, founder and creator of GrowthDay. Welcome to an awesome session where we're going to talk about the leadership principles and practices that can help you have a greater impact in the world, in your family, with your teams, in your community, as you're somebody who wants to be a person of influence. You want to help people. You want to serve people. You want to do something significant with your life that really matters. You got to start working these practices and principles in leadership. Without leadership, we don't make our impact. So I'm pumped to be here today with you and this Growth Day community, because that's what we are all about. Our mission is, how do we enable you to have a home for personal development? How do we make self-improvement a way of life for you so that you keep getting better and better and better at what you're doing, about who you are, so you can reach your full potential and so you can serve your highest purpose here. I always begin with principle number one, my biggest belief, my biggest teaching in all of leadership. And it's 5 simple words. People support what they create. People support what they create. This is the defining leadership principle of my life. Every time I'm working with a leader and they're frustrated with the coworker, they can't get the team to be motivated and energized. The down line isn't performing. The up line isn't listening. We got this problem where you can't mobilize a movement, and or you started a political action committee and it didn't stick, or you started your nonprofit and no one contributed. It always comes down to a fundamental misperception about this topic of leadership. Leadership's fundamental principle is that people support what they create. If you want people to follow you, they must create with you. They must feel enabled, trusted, empowered, autonomous, capable, rewarded for participating in the journey, in what we'll call the vision today, right? If they don't have any hand in shaping it, and if they have no reward, autonomy, or trust in participating in it, they got no skin in the game. They got no reason to be enthusiastic, excited, hardworking, excellent. So what happens? Well, as you see around the world, it's like we have these command and control old models from the past, these dictatorial ways of leading where it was like, do this, do this, do this, very early 1800s stuff that should have been done by the 1950s, but people are still learning. And so you have this situation where a lot of people still think of like, oh, I have positional leadership. I'm the boss, or I'm this leader. Everyone needs to only do these things. And it becomes a one-way street, or it becomes something where the leader doesn't have the connection with everybody else because no one has a part in it. They can't play yet. They don't believe in it yet. Even if they like you, even if they think you're an okay person, even if you had great successes in the past, if you don't get them collaborating to create where we're going, how we're going there, and how we'll be together, they're not interested. They'll pretend, they'll take the paycheck, but they'll be gone in 6 months. Or when the tough times hit, or the stock price goes down, they're bailing, man, because they're thinking, you know what? I'm not part of this. I'm not part of this. The new buzzword of the last decade was certainly culture in organizations, even in our homes, right? Create a culture of openness, of diversity, create a culture of enthusiasm, create a culture of accountability, culture. What does that mean? Culture is the outcome of the philosophy that people support what they create. That we're collectively shaping a culture. Well, we collectively shape the leadership journey too. And so if you don't feel like you have buy-in from people, which is the number one complaint of all leaders worldwide in my research at the High Performance Institute, the number one thing I ever found was that leaders are disappointed, discouraged, or demotivated because they don't get buy-in from their teams. Most of the time, they blame the teams. They blame the organizational structure. They blame the old leaders. They blame their spouse, their partner. They blame anybody they can. Why won't the school board listen to me? Why won't this person? They won't do this. I have this idea. No one comes along. It's because you have this idea and you didn't invite anyone to come along. You just told people what to do. You told people how to think. You told people how it's supposed to go. And I'm telling you, we live in a participative global culture now, where people want a voice. And so much of leadership is understanding where to open conversations to allow diverse voices to come in, have a perspective on something, even if you or the leaders maintain that decision-making authority. The active participation and enrollment of conversation is the difference maker. And your job as a leader, listen to this, is to hold that space, to set the standard, the expectation, the structure for that space for other people to participate. Now, I know some of you, the leaders out there are like, yeah, but that's super hard. The timing of that and when, and some people have a voice, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're not an expert, Brendon. Why would I listen to them? And oh my gosh, does this mean more meetings for me? Don't worry. This isn't about you doing more meetings just to listen casually. The principle I want you to write down: people support what they create. The 5 most important words in all of leadership: people support what they create. If you get that principle, we can change the world. When you don't get that principle, you don't get the followers. Now, with that, I want to introduce a concept, that I've literally been teaching for 21 years now. I don't like the word followers. I don't like the word leaders versus, or the positioning leaders versus followers. If you studied with me before, I really believe you have leaders, and instead of followers, you have collaborators. It's just a different way of defining things. Unfortunately, in our world, because of popularity and ego, when someone follows you on the internet, it all became about a one-way street. And so now we've ingrained in people's human behavior this idea that I broadcast my world and you should follow it. That's come into organizations. I tell you what to do and you should follow it. Versus, hey, we're co-creating this organization together. We're co-creating this team. We're co-creating this marriage. We're co-creating this family. Soon as you get that you're co-creating your family together, you're a different styled parent. Most troubles in parenting relationships and familiar relationships come from an old model that it's the parent versus the kids, and you do what I say, or you're not loved, you're dead to me. That really didn't work so good. We've learned that to have healthy and adaptive children, they need to feel part of the family process. They need to feel connected, cared for, and collaborative, literally, in how their day goes, how their life goes. They need to have a voice in it. Or later in their life, they're more passive towards chasing what's important to them. They never develop that autonomy early enough. So now, unfortunately, they do. They follow whatever's happening at school. They follow whatever's happening with that peer set, and they follow it often right into places you didn't want them to go. And so by controlling them too much, it removes their autonomy. By removing their autonomy, now they'll follow often the wrong people at the wrong time, stay in the wrong relationships because they didn't develop personal autonomy. Why? Because someone in their life too late failed to realize that this person had to be participating in shaping their life, their days, their weeks, their dreams, their destiny earlier. And I think that's so important in this world today, where you get a lot of blind followership to ideology or darker kind of like the darker side of humanity, where people don't question or they don't think because they haven't been participating in shaping their life. And we have to be aware of that as leaders. It's like, oh, you're going to have some people on your team who are super participative, and other people, they were never given autonomy or trust or a voice, and they're super smart, but you're not getting enough from them. They just need to be enrolled to participate in a different way than the person who's always had the benefit of being in communities where they were heard. We live in a world right now where so many people have never actually been heard. Then we expect them to perform as high performers in their organizational settings. It's like, oh, you have to be aware of these things. Some members of your team and some members of your family haven't been heard, haven't felt heard, haven't been allowed space for it. And I don't just mean listen to, I mean being allowed space to make decisions together about what's important. And that's just so critical. People support what they create. So you got to be thinking, I would love for you to evaluate yourself as a leader. Go, okay, on a scale, this is the workshop part, this is personal development, right? We're going to do the work. If you wrote down people support what they create, I'm curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, yeah, you don't get that. 1's a bad number, okay? 1's the worst. I won't give you a 0, we'll give you a 1. And then there's 10. I'm going to ask you 2 questions to score yourself here. 1 to 10. First score, how conscious have you been about this principle? Like when I say people who support their create, you're like, oh yeah, I get that. I've been doing that. I'm aware of that. That's important to me. 1, has not been on my radar. 10, that's been on my radar. Did you know the higher you score on that, the higher life satisfaction you have, the higher connection you have with your employees, the longer your employees tend to stay employees? I know you're not all organizational leaders, but it basically means that the better you've been conscious about this and practicing it, the happier your culture, your team, and others are. They want to be on that journey. So put that front of dashboard. I call it front of radar. Like that's on your radar. That's on your dashboard. Have I been leading in this style, or at least aware of this? People support what they create. Okay, got it. The second way I'd love you to score that is to take a look at the most critical members of your team. Maybe this is your executive team, or the most important people in your life, your family, and look at each of them individually through this lens. It's like, oh, has this person been co-creating the experience with me? Have they been active in that or passive in that? And not as a judgment to them, like a 1, they're bad. It's that, oh, if they are a 1, I, as a leader, need to create a process, a rhythm, a meeting, an opportunity for this person to get some decision-making authority, to establish some trust, to, if anything, to be heard more in meetings. Maybe this person is never called on. They never get the opportunity. And you're gonna like, oh, I'm gonna be aware this person has not been participating. And I need that participation from them if we're gonna have long-term success, and we need to participate together. So let me have that. So I'm always thinking about that. And when I work with leaders and I coach them in high performance, it's always about, okay, let's work through your team. Let's walk through this principle, and let's talk about each of these critical team members. And do they feel empowered to be part of the process? Because people support what they create is ultimately people being part of the process. Because guess what? When they're part of the process, they've helped come up with the decisions. They're working towards something they had a hand in. They fight for it. They stay focused on it. They have ego and decision-making in that process, and they want to protect it. When someone has an idea, you know what they want to do? They want to own that. They want to protect that. They want to perpetuate that. They want to ensure that that idea lives. And they'll do that sometimes sanely and unsanely. You could look at across humanity, the worst of the human conditions and human actions in the world came from people who had an idea and they believed it and they shaped it and they fought for it till death when it was destructive towards others. And the most beautiful parts, the better angels of our nature, came from those times in which we had an idea, we were participative in that idea, continuing shaping it, evolving it, making it even better. And as we made that even better, oh, okay, we made it together better together. We'll fight for it, we'll participate in it, but we'll do it for positive ends. It's a difference maker, isn't it? If you look around the world, even today, like at higher, political levels, as an example, like I happen to be doing this today on July 1st, so we're not too far away from an upcoming Independence Day in the United States. And that idea of democracy, of a participative democracy, that's a different way of thinking, and it changed the shape of history. And you saw we're still refining what our republic is and how it works together. We're still trying to figure out our systems and our rules. We're still working on an active democracy. And that's an incredible thing, an incredible blessing. And it's one reason why the country, at least globally, as I'm filming this, leads the world, right? People support what they create. Now, I don't want to get political with you where people are like, oh, I don't agree with this, or those Americans, or whatever. I'm just here to say there is definable, demonstratable, and great examples across organizations, across political systems, across socioeconomic systems, that when people are allowed to participate, better ideas come up, people have more buy-in, people stay committed over the long term, humans become more resilient themselves. It's important. It's so important. So please take an active role in this day. Score yourself, be honest. And think about this and how you can amplify this. If all you did is understand this principle and you practice this principle at the deepest levels, you would so far surpass almost everybody you're working with. I promise.
Many people often think that leaders are born. That is often a myth, that you have to be born a leader. You have to be born an entrepreneur. You have to be born someone that has that growth mindset. But you can be trained. There are so many ways that you can learn to strengthen and develop your leadership skills. So I want to share ways to strengthen your leadership personally, professionally, and publicly. The very first one is the one that people hate. So that's why I'm going to start with it. Asking for feedback. Now, I want you to think of 5 people that you've known or that have known you for the last at least 10 years, because you're going to ask them these set of questions once I get to it in a second. Okay. Brainstorm 5 people. These could be friends, coworkers, former classmates, people that know you on a little bit more of an intimate level. And the reason I'm asking for at least a decade is because you want to make sure the people you're asking these questions to have a little bit of context of your story. It's easy for someone to only see the positive sides of you when you're only hanging out when life is going well. But if someone's known you for a decade, they've probably seen you at your worst. I hope. That's the goal. We're not all saints here, okay? We've got saints and ain'ts. Sometimes I'm a saint, sometimes I'm an ain't. So first is your family. The first question I want you to ask your family is, when I'm stressed, am I scary to be around? The second question, how well do I communicate my needs? And the last one, what's one word to describe me when something inconvenient happens? And when you're asking these questions to your family members, again, this is going to take a lot of just ego reflection, because they're going to give you their honest truth. There's no one more honest in our lives than our family. I know my mother does not hesitate at any opportunity to tell me when I'm messing up at anything. Gloria, you're so impatient. My mom's Nigerian, for those that don't know. You're so impatient, Gloria. Take your time. Okay? The second group of questions that I want you to ask are for your friends. First question, are our conversations around gossip or growth? And this will be very telling, helping you identify some of the people that you shouldn't be spending so much time with. Because if these people are answering gossip, that's a problem. Second question to ask your friends, if I saw $100 on the ground, what do you think I would do with it? Sometimes our friends know us better than family. This is an integrity check. Would you pick up that $100 and keep it? Would you try to find its owner? Like, again, being a leader is keeping your ethics, your morality, your integrity in check. I firmly believe how you do one thing is how you do everything. If your friends tell you, oh, you probably put it in your pocket, you have failed as a leader. I'm kidding. Third question to ask your friends, is our friendship reciprocal, or do I need to be there for you more? Sometimes we don't even know if we've been a good friend, a good leader in people's lives, if we're not even there for them. Okay? Personally, professionally, and the last one, publicly. So all of us have communities that we're trying to serve online. Here are the questions to ask your followers, fans, people online that engage with your page. First question, what can I improve about my content? And you can ask this on Instagram stories. You can make this as a Facebook status update, as a tweet. The second one, what would you like to see more of? The third one, how can I be more valuable? Okay, so all of that was in the first section of asking for feedback. What great leaders do is constantly ask for feedback, personally, professionally, and publicly. When you're on this journey, you're building a brand, you're trying to be an icon, you often operate in a silo unintentionally, meaning you kind of separate yourself from everyone else. Everything that you do is a reflection of your own thoughts, the way, your own perspective, the way that you perceive the world. It is so important to get that feedback. Okay. Number 2, to strengthen your leadership, evaluate your goals. If you only want to help people that can pay you, I want you to check your heart. What I mean by that is the top leaders in the world, look at their social media platforms. They're using it to freely educate, motivate, and inspire the world. Yes, have paid clients, but how are you showing up on a regular basis, just hoping to inspire or liberate someone else? There's a quote that says, if all of your goals came true, would it change the entire world or just yours? Okay? It is so important that we are constantly checking our goals and our heart and the ways that we're serving other people. If I only posted when brands paid me to post, it would become a commercial place. My page would turn into some virtual real estate that I would just sell to the highest bidder. But someone who I used to do a lot of, influencer jobs, and I turned down dozens of jobs every single week because it's like my page is now, I'm so sacred about what I post on my page because I value my community so much. There are thousands of marketing messages and ads that they get every single day. I don't want my page to be just another one. At the end of the day, I'm here to freely serve and freely educate. Those that want to go deeper with me, they have options to, but make sure that you are not just creating content when you have something to sell. Great leaders have a dedication, a commitment, this deeper calling and inclination to just serve people. Okay, that's what it's really about. The third way to strengthen and deepen your leadership, seek challenges. Literally, seek out challenges. So often we are trying to find the easiest path to success. We're taking detours, we're circling the block twice, going the shortcut. My goodness, challenges develop you. Challenges help you build character, okay? Sure, you can have seasons of ease and seasons of growth, but make sure at least once a quarter, you're putting yourself in an environment where you're forced to confront a blind spot or a weakness. Sometimes we only work on our strengths, we only focus on what we're good at, but great leaders are constantly putting themselves in situations where they know, I don't have experience here, so I guess I'm gonna learn. I guess I'm gonna learn the hard way. The best teacher is the experience. It's not finding a way to avoid conflict, avoid conversation, avoid confrontation. It is going right into the middle of it. And me, some of you who have been here since January, you've seen me even develop my voice as a Growth Day coach. I remember my very first talk, I was talking to Blossom, who's on here as well. And I came in, I was really giggly and I was like really excitable and I was just laughing the whole time. You can see I've kind of like developed myself, developed my poise, developed a way to invoke a little bit of humor here and there, but making sure I'm putting the stories and the lessons first. A challenge for me, a challenge for many people is speaking. More people are afraid of public speaking than dying. It just goes to show how scary it is. So guess what I'm going to do to develop myself as a speaker? I'm going on a speaking tour next year. Terrifying. Woo, I'm so scared. Y'all are like exclusive. This is the first time I'm talking about it. But I'm like, how else am I going to be a better speaker? Why not put myself out there, go on tour, hit up as many cities across the nation as possible, and just put myself in places that are going to challenge me, grow me, force me to get even better at what I do. Okay. Number 4, the fourth way to strengthen your leadership, put yourself in more leadership positions. Some of us don't even trust our own leadership capabilities because we've never had to lead anything. Okay. I remember going back to high school and college, I was the team captain for many years. I also find myself naturally wanting to host things. Brendon would always say, you don't want to be the coolest person at the party. You want to be the host of the party. Brendon's like, he's always got those gems. It was literally like 2.5 years ago. I heard him say that at High Performance Academy. You don't want to be the coolest person at the party. You want to be the one to host the party because the host is taking on a leadership role. The host is delegating. The host is managing. The host is setting expectations. The host is setting out the invites. The host is marketing. The host is coordinating. My goodness, the host is doing the most. The hostess with the mostest. It is so important that you are constantly and consistently putting yourself in leadership positions so you can develop your communication skills, your ability to lead a team, your ability to just manage expectations. There's so much responsibility that comes with leadership, but so many of us avoid it because we're not sure of how good we're going to be at it. Again, the best way to grow at anything is to take it and tackle it head on. Okay.
I want to focus on something very unique and very specific in my presentation today. So when we think about leadership, there's sort of an old trope, which is it's all about motivation. Like leadership is about motivation. How do I motivate people to do X, Y, or Z so that we can make it happen, really effectively, and then we accomplish the big goal. And as a leader, I feel good about it. And a lot of the conversation around that is, what do we do externally? How do we build better communications so that, we really understand what the expectations are and what the mission is and what the vision is, and there's clarity and reinforcement and feedback on progress? How do we build culture in a way that's positive and constructive and generative and respectful and lead with dignity? And all of those things are super important. What I want to focus on is what I call the inside game of leadership. And what sort of has really captured my curiosity for a lot of years is why we do the things we do. A number of years back, Dan Pink, who's a friend, wrote a book called Drive. And he took a really deep look at motivation. What he learned was that, we tend to have one or two things to try and lead people to a particular outcome. He called it a carrot and a stick, the thing that you're working towards or the thing that you're trying to avoid and you're working away from. And he said, it's kind of an old model, for us to lead ourselves, to work really hard towards a particular desired goal or lead others, teams, groups, people, companies, divisions, something a little bit more innate has to happen. We have to figure out what is that innate driver of effort that makes us come alive, that nourishes us with a sense of purpose and meaning and flow and expressed potential, and drops us into a place of possibility and belief that things that maybe you didn't even think were possible actually just might be so. So I have spent years now really diving deep into what are these deeper impulses? What is that innate thing that exists inside all of us, to try and understand how we can harness it, how we can first identify it and then harness it. And I have to tell you, I came to believe something that had you asked me 10, 15 years ago, I probably would have laughed at you if you said this existed. What I came to believe is that we all have a unique imprint for work that makes us come alive. And I call these things your sparketypes. Now, what does that actually mean? The sparketype is, think of it as two different things bundled together. So first, we have an impulse for effort. And we have this impulse. We don't know where it comes from. A lot of folks have asked me, where do these impulses come from? And my answer is, it could be genetic. It could be behavioral. It could be environmental. It could be some blend of all three. Some people may believe that they're preordained by some sort of larger spiritual body. I'm actually kind of not entirely interested in the answer to that question. But what I have come to believe is they're there. And we've now seen that in more than 500,000 people that have been part of an ongoing study for the last 3 years through an assessment that we developed. And what we've learned is that there exist 10 unique impulses or imprints. And this is an impulse where you just feel like you would work really hard, you invest effort and energy in a particular way for no other reason than the way it makes you feel. Now, you may be really well compensated by this. You may be a part of a team where it is incredibly needed and necessary and valued, or you might just do it because it's the thing you can't not do. You may be a parent expressing this impulse in the context of raising a child, or a companion in the context of keeping somebody company, or any other domain. But these impulses are there. And what we've learned over the years, after deconstructing and deconstructing, is that we have 10 of these impulses. And wrapped around each one of these 10 impulses are a series of preferences, behaviors, and tendencies that tend to show up and form archetypes. So I coined the phrase sparketypes because it is the imprint or the archetype for work that sparks you, work that makes you come alive. So when I'm talking about the phrase coming alive, I'm talking about effort that gives you a sense of meaning, like who you are and what you're doing actually matters to you and maybe to the world. a feeling of excitement and energy, like full engagement, a feeling that you are easily lost or absorbed in that flow state where everything feels like you're just completely a part of it. Time fugues, you can blink and maybe it's been a minute, maybe it's been 10 hours. A sense that all of your potential is being expressed fully. There's nothing left behind. And more broadly, you have a stronger sense of purpose in life. But I think it would probably be helpful if I just quickly kind of walked you through these 10 different types. So the first type is what we call the maven, right? The maven. Now, the maven, the primary impulse is all about knowledge acquisition. It's about learning. It's driven by a fierce sense of curiosity or fascination. You live to learn, knowledge acquisition. Now, we call the second sparketype the maker. Now, my primary sparketype, and that means my strongest impulse for effort, is the maker. The maker is all about making ideas manifest. We create things. So the energy of creation is the fundamental drive. I literally wake up in the morning and I look around and I'm like, what can I make today? So that's the primary impulse of the maker. Now, the third one is the scientist. And the scientist is all about the burning question, the quandary, the puzzle. The fundamental energy of the scientist is figuring things out. It's problem solving. So let's talk about the next one. We call this the essentialist. Now, the essentialist is all about creating clarity and order from chaos. They're the ones who think often in spreadsheets, processes, systems. It's all about looking at sort of like big complex data sets or tons of things or stuff and organizing it, but not just for the purpose of it being organized, but for the purpose of creating a sense of calmness and clarity. So let's talk about the performer. Now, the performer is all about animating and enlivening interactions, moments, and experiences. The next sparketype is what we call the warrior. And the energy of the warrior, the impulse of the warrior is to gather and lead. So the warrior brings together a group of people, and they're very often one of those people, by the way. You know, they may be affected by something that they want to see change, or maybe they want to go on a great adventure. And they're one of the people who has this Jones. So they bring together a group of people. They kind of bring them all in. They gather them together, and then they step into a leadership position. And they say, okay, here's where we're starting. Here's the mission of where we're going to go. And I am going to lead us there. The energy of a leader is ferocity. So next up, we have what I call the sage. Now, the fundamental impulse of the sage is to instill insight. So the same way that the maven is all about knowledge acquisition, like I'm going to get encyclopedic and bring it all into my head. The sage is all about whatever's in my head. I want it out there. I want to share it with everybody. And most sages, even when they're learning, they're actually learning for the purpose of being a better sharer of knowledge. Next up, we have what I call the advisor. And the advisor is all about guiding people through a process of growth. Very often, the advisor operates in an intimate, trust-based container of safety and respect and dignity. We're getting really close. Final two sparketypes here. So the advocate. The advocate is all about championing ideas and ideals. Now, this could be an individual. This could be a community. It could be human beings. It could be the environment. It could be animals, or it could be an idea or a concept. So an advocate may be sitting around a conference room table, and people could be brainstorming and throwing out ideas. And there could be an idea that's really quietly sitting on the side, or maybe somebody told the advocate about their idea beforehand, but they were a very quieter person. They were more introverted. And in a group setting, they weren't comfortable bringing it out and really advocating for it. And the advocate may say, okay, you know, like there's this one idea that is super important and super valuable, and we need to center it in the conversation and bring it attention and energy. And that is often an incredibly powerful role. The advocates often become a strong activists. And finally, we bring it home with what I call the nurturer. And the fundamental impulse of the nurturer is all about elevation. It's about giving care and taking care of others. And again, similar to the advisor or similar to the advocate, this may be for an individual, it may be for a small group, it may be animals, it may be the environment. The subject of the nurturing and the elevation, it can be incredibly individual, but they wake up in the morning and there's a fundamental DNA level impulse to nurture, to take care of others, to elevate them for no other reason than the way it makes them feel in the process of doing it and the effect that they actually see on others while they're doing it. So those are the 10 different sparketypes that we've talked about. And you may be thinking, well, okay, as I describe the different ones, you're like, well, am I that one? Am I that one? Am I that one? Am I that one? And what we've learned through developing an assessment and now having a huge data set that's growing really rapidly by the day is that none of us are just one of these. Yeah, we tend to be a combination, but we tend to have two really strong impulses sort of like at the top of our spectrum and also on the other side, a very weak one. We call the two ones your primary and your shadow sparketype. Your primary is your strongest impulse for effort for no other reason than just the way it makes you feel like you're doing the thing you're here to do. And your shadow, you can either look at as your kind of your runner-up, or very often there's a more nuanced relationship between your shadow and your primary. And that is this: you do the work of your shadow in order to be able to do the work of your primary better. Quick example, I am what I call a maker scientist, maker primary and scientist shadow. Now I'm all about making stuff, but inevitably in the process of creation, I hit a wall, I hit a problem, I need something solved. So I'll sort of drop into my maker or my scientist side of my brain and say, okay, how do I figure this out? How do I release myself from this quandary? How do I go deep into this particular problem? And then as soon as I have what I need to go back to the more generative process of creation, I'll shift back into maker mode.
This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.